does pertain to The Last of Us once again. And it kind of pertains to the scale of The Last of Us. Because when it comes to the game itself, whether it be the HBO series, the sequel, it has become not just a video game. It's become a part of internet culture as a whole. When people, even people that don't play video games, may know of The Last of Us in some way, shape, or form. And that makes me wonder, how has that success been difficult to deal with? Or has it been great to deal with? I really want to know.
It's a great question. I don't often get to reflect on that. I'll start with the negative and go to the positive. The negative is that, when something is this successful, it feels like there's more and more eyes looking at you and kind of waiting for you to trip and mess up. And there could be a lot of negative voices out there. Again, it goes back to a previous answer about social media, that there's some mean people out there. And whenever you do anything, I think, worthwhile that becomes big, especially, again, if you're wrestling with difficult ideas, that there's going to be people that don't like it for whatever reason. They're not going to like it, and they're going to let you know that they don't like it. And sometimes that amount of negativity can get overwhelming. So it's really about learning how can you protect yourself. That's why I say, when I talk to new directors, I really encourage them to stay off of social media as much as possible for their own mental health. But then there's the positive side, which is you get to make something that impacts a lot of people. And sometimes it impacts a few people in really significant ways. And I'll give some examples of Ashley Johnson has told me multiple times, fans, she does a lot of conventions of signings and stuff, fans have come up to her and said, because of The Last of Us, it gave them the courage to come out to their family. And again, when we made Ellie gay, we knew it would have some impact on people, but I'd never given it that much thought. And then you felt the power of diversity of characters, of when you see yourself on the screen in some way, it makes you feel special. It makes you feel like all of a sudden, you could make art. And again, it's maybe not the best analogy, but I remember when I used to read Next Gen magazine. Maybe Harold remembers it. But it used to be the video game magazine, and I would read it cover to cover every month. And when I was in school, one of the issues was had an interview with Jason Rubin and Andy Gavin, the co-founders of Naughty Dog, and they talked about how they skipped their own bar mitzvah party to go play at an arcade, or because they imported a Super Nintendo from Japan, so they could play Super Nintendo before anybody in the U.S. could play it. And all of a sudden, just because they said bar mitzvah, I'm like, oh wait, they're Jewish? I saw myself as being able to make video games. So again, there's something just magical that happens when you see yourself either in the creator or the art itself that I underestimated. And when you do something that, again, people can relate to and is not only has diversity, but is actually good, it can be really inspiring. And I'll wrap up this long answer by, it was recently the 10th anniversary of The Last of Us. And I'm an introvert, so it's hard for me to talk in front of big groups of people. I get the most nervous talking in front of Naughty Dog. I can't quite tell you why that is. I think it's because I try to do right by the people at Naughty Dog more than anybody else. I feel like if they don't like the game that we've made or the direction we've gone, I see that as my failure. So I just get nervous whenever I have to talk in front of them. It's the 10th anniversary of Last of Us, and I need to say something. I don't know what I'm going to say. And eventually, Alison Mori, who's the city manager, hands me the microphone. It's like, here you go. It's your turn. So I'm there with the microphone, and I start rambling kind of like this. I'm like, if any of you ever met a fan that has been really affected by the game, and I give some examples of people that have gone through depression and have told me how much the game has meant to them and helped them through that. And that's been incredibly satisfying in ways that I wouldn't have predicted. And isn't that cool? And I started getting really emotional because it came to me what I'm going to say. And I'm like, but I know something even cooler. How many of you are here today because of The Last of Us? And I was expecting a couple people to raise their hand. Half the studio raised their hands. And I remembered playing Metal Gear Solid or Ocarina of Time, these games that were so influential on me that I was I wanted to make games. It's it changed my entire life because I wanted to make art. And now a game that I worked on has done that. It paid it forward and like brought in like this next generation of people. And I wouldn't have told you that's the greatest compliment, but at that moment, that it was the greatest compliment I could ever get.